Now, without further ado, let's welcome Chris, Kayla, and Heidi. Ladies, the session is yours.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody. We are so pleased to be here today to chat with you about a project that has really been instrumental, not just at my university, University of Wisconsin-Parkside, but really has had some incredible scalable potential. So really the core of our topic today is safety, accessibility, and advancing equity for students who are engaged in experiential learning. My name is Kayla Bingen. As I mentioned, I work at University of Wisconsin-Parkside. We are located in the southeastern corner of the state of Wisconsin. And in my role there, I support our experiential learning programs, internships, community-based learning, a wide variety of programs here at Parkside so that students are going out into the community and putting their learning into action.
Hi, friends. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Chris Paxton McMillan. I'm in my mid 50-ish, and my pronouns are she and her. And as the president of D3 Training Solutions, I am located in rural Oklahoma, but I have the privilege of collaborating with incredible professionals like Kayla and companies, including Heidi at Dynamic Training Resources. So, Heidi, take it away.
Thanks. I'm Heidi Strangberg. I'm the president and the owner of Dynamic Training Resources, and we are an e-learning development company. We had the real pleasure of working on this project with our client, Kayla and UW-Parkside, and I've been in the e-learning arena for over 20 years and have an awesome team that loves to create engaging training programs that wow our clients. So for the agenda today, we'll talk about UW-Parkside and DTR and how we worked together and collaborated over a couple of years on this project. We'll start with how UW-Parkside identified the need for the training program, and then we'll discuss the training design and the instructional design and the content of the course and how all of that came together. Finally, we'll cover the implementation, the assessment, and the scalability of this training course for other colleges and universities.
Unmute. In today's session, you will learn how Kayla pulled all this together by gathering student feedback to ensure adaptability for diverse learning environments and institutional needs, and then how this program expanded to multiple campuses. You'll also discover how tools like Lectura, Beyond, WellSaid Labs, Rev.com, and the ELB Learning Asset Library were used to create an interactive, accessible course, all while prioritizing accessibility and inclusivity. You'll also gain insights on designing for assistive devices, including key lessons from testing and improvements.
So you got to hear a little bit about us, but we also want to get to know you so we can better tailor our presentation, make sure we hit some really key talking points for all of you. So please take a moment to grab the QR code with your phone, or you can open a new tab on your computer and go to slido.com and use that code to respond. Tell us what industry you're in or your role as it relates to instructional design. Seeing a few folks typing. Go ahead. Already a very mixed bag. Any and all, that's fair.
And we have a couple that have come in the chat that may not have their phones that are also from training and development.
Excellent.
And one person that really likes your treble clef in the background.
Yes, thank
Gotta
you.
plug that in.
Thank you. Wonderful. So again, it's great to have a good sense of our audience here. Today's conversation will really center around developing equitable, accessible trainings that obviously this is a project that has really been focused on that higher education environment, but hopefully will give you nuggets and ideas and potential innovations for you to implement really in industry, any industry, or really in any context for a variety of needs. So I want to tell you a little bit about University of Wisconsin-Parkside so that you understand where our need truly originated from. As I mentioned, we are part of the Universities of Wisconsin system. We are one of the 13 comprehensive universities, so we are a 4-year program. But we serve a very unique student population down here in southeastern Wisconsin. About 50% of our students are first generation. 30 to 40% are underrepresented minorities, and over 60% of our students are Pell eligible. So we serve students with significant financial needs, very diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, a large non-traditional student population as well. So as we look at this student population, we are always asking ourselves, what do they not know? And if they don't know it, how would they know to ask for it? So we've really challenged ourselves to think proactively about their needs. Additionally, it's not just about where they're coming from when they enter our doors at UW-Parkside, but also where they're going to end up after they complete their degree with us. Over 60% of our students will stay in the Tri-County area after graduating from our institution, and almost 90% will stay within the state of Wisconsin. So these are not just our students, these are my neighbors. These are my future coworkers. These are people that I will interact with throughout the rest of my life and will be essential members of our community. So the way that we prepare them is critical, again, not just for their own success, but really for the health and wellness of our entire community.
So a little bit about Dynamic Training Resources. I'm the president and owner of DTR. We're celebrating 20 years in the e-learning industry this year, so that's pretty exciting. We're located also in southeastern Wisconsin, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is how we met our client from UW-Parkside. My role is to evaluate and quote projects when we get requests from new or repeat clients. So I determine the best authoring tools that we should use for the project and allocate the resources that are necessary to complete the project on time and within scope. One of the aspects we evaluate on the front end is accessibility. That's one big thing we want to know before we start developing, is whether this course must be accessible to learners with disabilities. Additionally, we want to know whether learners will be using mobile devices, what languages, if any, the course will be translated into, and whether there's a need for professional audio or AI audio and closed captions. Those are some examples of things we evaluate while planning to build an e-learning course, so there's no surprises mid-development, which I'm sure everyone has had a project with surprises. Our team consists of project managers, instructional designers, and developers that use Lectora, Storyline, Rise, Beyond, Camtasia, Canva, all the e-learning tools, basically. We have an awesome QA team that tests our courses on all the platforms that the learners might be using, including accessibility testing as well. And we have some part-time regulars on our team, such as Chris Paxton, McMillan, or CPAX, who often joins our team to lend a hand with her expertise in programming, especially in Lectora in regards to accessibility to meet WCAG and Section 508 compliance requirements. So for this particular project, we started with an ELB Lectora template. We typically build our own template from scratch based on our client's brand and colors, but for this project, we found a nice template that was ready to go. So we thought. So as with any tool, we want to remind everyone from the start, when you're choosing a template that's already built, that it may need tweaking, and it most likely does. And there were some challenges we encountered with layering and that type of thing that we encountered. So you can never count on whatever template you decide to start with to be perfect. You always have to look under the hood to make sure the programming works for the conditions that you're working with. So that's one of the lessons that you'll hear more about later in this presentation. We also keep in mind that this course will be rebranded many times and has been rebranded 3 times already, because this product will be purchased by other colleges and universities. So rebranding is something that you want to keep in mind as you're developing some things like your color combinations for your buttons and your template style and the logo size and that type of thing. They may all play into this later. For example, when you're measuring color contrast to make sure it meets accessibility requirements. Well, when you change colors to different brands, then you have to check those colors again. Our websites here will be showing more on that later.
So next up with our Slido here, I want to get the wheels turning a little bit. And I'd love, again, if you would grab your phones or access that tab again for our next question. What word or maybe words come to mind when you think of designing accessible training? So again, kind of getting us in the headspace of what we're really going to unpack in today's presentation. Let us know what word or maybe a couple of words jump out at you when you think of designing accessible training. Not seeing any typers yet. Anyone having any issues with the link? So I see something in the chat. I see screen readers in the chat. That's so odd that it's not coming up with the new question. Maybe try refreshing the screen that you're on and see if it'll bring up the second question. Thank you, Mariah, for letting us know. Yeah, maybe try a screen refresh and see if it'll prompt you on to the next question. If not, we can always pivot and you can just drop your thoughts in the chat. Again, I think it's still a valuable exercise. So yeah, feel free to just drop some words in the chat. Again, I already saw screen readers. What are we thinking about when designing accessible training? Equity and technology. Yeah, as we were seeing right now, sometimes technology can be both an asset and sometimes a barrier. Legal, safety, color contrast. Again, yeah, two, talking about color contrast or color in the presentation, how it presents to the user. Oh, difficult or perhaps expensive. Yeah. So a lot of words that we're seeing, oh, intuitive, relatable. I love this. So I'm seeing a lot of perspectives into this that some are really focused on that technical side. You know, what do you have to think of behind the scenes? Some of it might be content related. You know, really all of it with the user in mind, really knowing that audience and trying to be proactive in understanding their needs. Which really takes us wonderfully into this next section where what brought Parkside to identifying this need in the first place? What brought us to Dynamic Training Resources doorstep? And as with many wonderful things, it starts with student stories. But unfortunately, these stories are really left us thinking about the ways that we prepare our students. The first was an internship. A female college student was interning at a sports organization, and she was taking part in an event there when she and her colleague, also a woman, were approached by an older gentleman that they didn't know. He was clearly making some inappropriate comments, saying, "You're too pretty to work in this industry," comments like that. And they brushed it off. They left it off. They were on the clock. Later, they saw this same gentleman talking with their boss. And it turns out that that man was a pretty high up official within the organization. And he called him over and he asked for hugs. And the boss did nothing. just kind of stood by and smiled. And the reason this came to light at all was not that our student reported it to her professor immediately. She brought it up in a reflection paper months after the incident had occurred. And that professor immediately brought it to our office and said, I'm so shocked that she wouldn't have thought that this was a big deal. Why didn't she tell me right away? And we started to really think, why didn't she say something right away? Did she know that she had the right to say something? Did she feel safe saying something? We had another incident with one of our community-based learning students. Again, that's a service learning program, so students are doing volunteer service while earning credit. This student was volunteering at a healthcare organization, and a client left an inappropriate note on their windshield with their phone number. That student did report it to a professor, but not before sharing that note with her spouse, who called that number, and an argument ensued that escalated probably to an unsafe point. And again, we sat down and evaluated, how can we prepare our students? How can we communicate to our students the best paths to pursue if and when an unfortunate circumstance like this happens? Again, we can't assume that all of our students have that knowledge. So then we started to do some research. Is this happening? Where is this happening? Does something already exist as a training solution? And we learned from the Courage to Act, which is a nonprofit organization based in Canada. They are dedicated to creating safer, more respectful workplaces, organizations, and institutions. And they did this national research project to learn more about sexual harassment faced by students participating in experiential learning. And we see some pretty jarring statistics here. 1 in 2 post-secondary students telling us that they experience at least one instance of sexual harassment. Nearly 3/4 of staff had heard a story about something like that. And a quote from a student, "I guess it's just the price I pay to be in my industry." And wow, we took a deep breath and we said, why are we doing this at all? And then we said, well, experiential learning is meant to also prepare students for their future careers. If we pull them from experiential learning now for fear of something like this, are we not just doing even less to prepare them for what they may experience out in the broader workforce? So instead, we pivoted and we decided to come up with a proactive solution and develop a training, which is, again, when we got in touch with Dynamic Training Resources and developed our training objectives. Again, I'm really focused on, of course, just preparing students first and foremost for experiential learning. What is experiential learning? What is an internship? What is community-based learning? And why is this different from perhaps just another class that you would take at college? We also want to ensure that we're educating students about what is and isn't safe and appropriate behavior in those kinds of settings. Again, we cannot take for granted that this is something that our learners already knew. But we didn't want to stop there. You cannot end on the world is a dark and scary place. The most important part of this training was that we were empowering students to speak up on their own behalf as well as for others. So a big portion of this is showing them these scenarios, prompting them to make decisions and recognize when there's warning signs, when there's something that's going wrong, and then helping them choose a path to the best possible solution to address that situation. So this goes all the way back to 2022. It's been almost 3 years, which is amazing. And we have learned and grown so much through this project. At that time, again, we got in touch with Dynamic Training Resources through a bid process. And it has been a joy to work with Heidi and her entire team, Chris as one of the lead developers on this project. So we developed the storyboard and all the content, working closely with UW Legal, Human Resources, Title IX, many representatives who contributed to the content development to make sure that it was not just appropriate and saying all the correct legal things that we needed to, but look deeply at what we were saying to students and making sure that it would resonate with them, that this was going to be relatable and they could connect to it. We produced a demo and we presented that demo to Universities of Wisconsin, and I am so pleased to say that they bought in completely, fully funded development of the entire project, not just for UW-Parkside, but also provided additional funds so that we could scale this to all Universities of Wisconsin schools, which is just an incredible vote of confidence in the importance of training and preparation like this to ensuring equity for all of our students of all walks of life across the state of Wisconsin. In fall of 2023, that was the first time we were able to roll out the completed training to our Parkside faculty. That summer before, we did a student focus group where we gathered some wonderful feedback, which I'll be sharing with you later. And once we had this established at Parkside, we were then able to roll out to the other UWs with a generic version that they could use in a variety of courses, a variety of settings. Every school is using it a little bit differently, which is something that I love, that it has that flexibility to meet each institution where they're at. Just last August, the team here wrote and published with ELB Learning a case study. Also last fall, we assessed the implementation rate. You're going to hear some of that data later. And then we also secured our first client. The goal was also that, yes, we wanted to roll this out to the UWs, which was funded by our system, but we also saw the potential for branded versions, higher tiers, where institutions could do tons of customization, which Heidi is going to be able to address with us a little bit later. So jumping into what's actually included in this training, I've been going on and on about how wonderful it is and how important it is. Let's talk about what's inside. So again, we need to just define experiential learning for students and help them prepare for that experience. So really in these first two modules, just introducing them to the topic, talking about asking questions in the workplace, making sure that they're oriented well. When you're confused or off balance, you're not going to be able to be successful in the first place. And from there, we jump into defining that professional behavior and those appropriate boundaries, discussing what it means to be an active bystander, who can be harassed and who can be the harasser, taking ownership for that and understanding that it may not be someone that you expect, but truly anyone can be a victim of harassment. We also presented them with some warning signs. So just before the full scenarios, just some short snippet stories where they can really evaluate, is the behavior that I'm reading about here something that I should be worried about? Could this be an indication of something that's about to escalate to a really inappropriate level? So again, doing some judgment-based practice, and then we move into the branching scenarios, the absolute meat and potatoes of this training. 3 fully animated, really thoughtfully designed scenarios representing different settings: an internship setting in a corporate environment, a community-based learning setting at a food pantry, and then working at a government agency, kind of in an ambiguous, could be a service learning, could be an internship capacity. Most importantly, they make choices and they see the outcomes of those choices in real time. Of course, there's lots of options when it comes to real life, more than just potentially 3 choices, which we'll talk about later, but just having that opportunity to see those choices play out and acknowledging what can happen next after that, so they feel more prepared and feel more confident with that information. Very importantly, we load them up with resources at the end. We make sure they're aware of the regional and national resources, but also who's available right here at their school. We let them know that they're not required to report, but we always encourage them to. That there's never, a wrong time to come forward with information like this, and we are here for you, whether that's your professor, whether that's your work supervisor, whether that's another person that you trust at the institution. We are your network and your support system. All the students then take a final quiz, pass with at least an 80% in order to earn their certificate of completion, which again, we've embedded this training into our LMS, which is Canvas. So instructors are able to put this right into their internship and community-based learning courses and see the grades as students complete it. So we do want to give you a little snippet right now of what this training looks like. We're going to show you just a piece of the very first scenario.
You have been an intern at XYZ company for 3 months. You're having a great experience and have a good relationship with your supervisor, Terry. During a staff meeting, Terry sits very close to Ling, one of the new interns, and repeatedly touches her on her leg and shoulder, seemingly for emphasis. Ling appears uncomfortable but doesn't say anything. What should you do next? Click Next to decide.
Now that you have seen the scenario, would you? Do nothing. No one else in the meeting says anything, and if Ling is uncomfortable, she should be the one to speak up. Talk to Ling. Indicate that you noticed she might have felt uncomfortable and ask if there's anything you can do to help. Or talk to Terry. Terry's behavior is clearly inappropriate, so you should confront him after the meeting. Review each option presented and decide how you would react. Choose the option you think is best.
Ling quits next week. She's upset because she didn't want to leave, but she didn't know she had other options. While this type of touch may not seem like a big deal, unwanted physical contact of any kind might make someone feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Additionally, this behavior may escalate over time. Though these conversations can be uncomfortable, assuming others may take action may lead to no action being taken at all. You are correct that the best option is for Ling to speak up, but she may need some encouragement to seek out the resources she needs. You may be able to provide helpful guidance or support that she wouldn't otherwise know. This is an opportunity to be a good active bystander. Go back and see how a different choice changes the outcome.
So as you can see, students then get to unpack the outcome of their choice a little bit. Eventually, we hope that they will make that right choice, which was option 2, and they can see the outcome there. But then we also evaluate it as a team. There's more that happens once Ling reports, or if you advocate on Ling's behalf, that we need students to understand, both from the legal perspective and just from a personal perspective. So for each of these scenarios, after they see that positive outcome, there's also a what happens next section.
Neither you nor Ling has an obligation to report this behavior. Since Terry is a supervisor, XYZ company may have an obligation to address this behavior. Be aware that once Ling brings this to the attention of human resources, you or others may be asked to make a statement about what you witnessed. You may have a conversation with someone in HR, or you may be asked to submit a written statement. It's important to be specific and focus on the facts. Sometimes people are afraid to report for fear of what their supervisor or others at the organization might do. It is illegal for the company or organization to retaliate against you. This means they cannot fire you or punish you in other ways because of your report. Since you approached Ling, she may ask you to speak on her behalf. It is up to you if you feel comfortable doing so or not. If you do, speak to someone in human resources in a confidential setting. Confirm with Ling if she is comfortable with you using her name or not, although you cannot necessarily promise confidentiality once you share information with someone else. If she prefers to remain anonymous, HR can still document the complaint and may speak to Terry. This is also useful in case other reports have or will be filed against him. There is a chance Ling may decline to seek help or resources and asks you not to say anything. While you may want to speak to someone on Ling's behalf, this is not your place at this time. Let Ling know that you're here for her in case she changes her mind later.
So as you can see, it was really important to us that we represented a really diverse group of individuals in each of these scenarios, as well as a variety of different relationships. So in scenario 2, you're going to see a student interacting with a client at that food pantry. And in scenario 3, you would see a student having a peer-to-peer unfortunate interaction, understanding that it's not always that supervisor-intern relationship that can be problematic. There are other avenues that can also have potential harassment implications.
Okay, excellent, Kayla. So again, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I'm going to get more into the development tools that were utilized on this project. First, we chose Lectora as our authoring tool because this software allows more complexity of programming, such as using variables or adding HTML code when we need to stretch the limits of what's possible to create our interactive learning experiences, such as the branching exercises, as you just saw. There is a lot of programming in the background to navigate the user to the appropriate place within the course based on the decisions they made in the scenarios and the learners driving those exercises. Also for the reliability of the accessibility programming, Lectora is a wonderful tool. It's very important that this course be 100% accessible to users with disabilities that use screen readers or use keyboard only. We use a lot of authoring tools and find that Lectora is the most dependable to ensure the best experience for learners with disabilities. We also have the use of the ELB asset library, which we use a lot for choosing some characters, backgrounds, images, that kind of thing. We love to use ReviewLink as our collaboration tool, which we used a lot with our client Kayla to go back and forth and resolve issues. We use the Beyond software for our animations, and this works very well for our animated scenarios, and we never have issues dropping those videos into Lectora. They work very nicely together. We used rev.com for the closed captioning to generate the text captions, and that's a very reliable tool. But always remember to read through your captions though, because not all the words export exactly as they should, so you may need to make adjustments. We used Well Said Labs for the narration, and we had a few different narrated voices in there and found that Well Said offered a good variety of voices that sounded realistic. And for accessibility testing, we used NVDA and just the keyboard, no mouse clicks allowed. And now we're going to hear more from Chris about the accessibility programming.
Thanks, Heidi and Kayla. Now, one of the terms that we saw on there, or I often hear, is that building accessible courses is hard or expensive. But I believe when you think about accessibility from the beginning, it really becomes second nature. So going into this, we knew we wanted to ensure the course met Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, you can hear that term, 2.2 requirements. So within Lectora, we enabled the Use Web Accessibility settings. This ensures that the alt text is always published for images and buttons. Visual indicators are displayed when an object receives focus for those using, again, that keyboard only for navigation. And that shows users where they are within a page, is that visual indicator. Once we found an ELB learning template we wanted, we needed to customize it to fit our needs because we knew we were going to, as mentioned, changing the colors. We needed to make sure it met our accessibility needs. And it was important to give the developers the ability to maintain the reading and tabbing order for those navigating the content, again, with keyboard only or when using assistive technology. You can see here in the screenshot how the tabbing order looks, along with how the built-in accessibility, Lectora accessibility review actually looks. You can kind of see the comments there. We worked with Kayla and UW-Parkside to develop an accessibility statement where we included instructions for using the audio and the closed captioning. This also gave the end users control. They have the ability to autoplay automatically where the page started, or to give the control to the user to start and stop the interactions. And finally, we use and still use, as we're updating with the colors, WebCam or WebAM contrast checker to verify the color contrast within our different template pages, and that text always had that contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. We also needed to verify navigation was consistently applied on all pages and that there were no time restrictions or limits within the programming, which was done really when we were building. The program also placed, or we placed, a skip navigation feature at the project level for the program to allow users to skip over repetitive logos, the navigation that appeared on every page by incorporating Lectora's HTML text types of the H1 through H6, with the most important heading having the rank of H1. Other global standards included that the requirement that all non-decorative images would have descriptive alt text. And a great time saver within Lectora is that Lectora will automatically create the alt text from the object's file name. This, of course, can be adjusted, but as a best practice, what we did when we downloaded the images is we would go ahead and create that alt text there. So then when we use them, it would actually automatically incorporate in rather than the default, image 123.jpg or whatever. Of course, all decorative images, which you notice we had a lot in the background there, have the empty alt text. For all audio or video players, they included a closed captioning button And the closed captioning BTT files, which are the ones that we use, were created using Rev.com's AI transcript and caption creator. And as developers, we of course had to verify the script and the timing, and then before it actually went to the testers for accuracy and timing. It's something we also did first. And if you've never seen how the VTT files or SRT files look, which is the files for closed captionings, we have an image there for you too. In addition to Lectora's built-in accessibility tester, accessibility testing, the program content was tested using the NVDA or non-visual desktop access tool screen reader. And then of course, we put up our mouse and uses the keyboard only navigation to identify and fix all accessibility issues.
So we want to tell you a little bit about how we implemented this at Parkside, because this is a huge part of the process. And I'm also so pleased that Heidi and the DTR team didn't just wash their hands of us either. This has been an ongoing conversation, partnership, even from that moment that we got that SCORM package. So again, starting with that focus group and sharing some of their feedback, and DTR being open to having those conversations based on what the students said to us. Overall though, that feedback was tremendously positive. They gave us some great insight, but also said, wow, I stayed engaged. This was interesting to me. They also agreed that after completing the training, they felt more prepared for experiential learning afterwards. Many of those students are doing internships and community-based learning courses now, or have even graduated. And then we're so pleased to say that 100% of students in that focus group agreed or strongly agreed that these topics are important, that this is something that needs to be in front of all students before they engage in off-campus experiences such as internships, community-based learning. We've even found application in research and lab courses, in student teaching courses. Again, any of those experiences where you might be interacting with an outside entity, school can make a bit of a bubble. And we want to make sure that we are pushing past that, that while they're still here with us, but engaging in the broader community, that we're giving them what they need. And then of course, I couldn't bring a student with me today to this webinar. So I always like to include some quotes from students who actually completed the training. This one student saying that they now know for sure, I can speak up and advocate for myself. Someone's going to listen. What I say matters. Just understanding harassment and discrimination. There might have been examples that they were familiar with, and others that they might have gone, I didn't even think that that was harassment or discrimination. And then lastly, just them understanding that your school, your professors, staff, really anyone you might interact with, we're on your side. We're here to take that report and support you however best we can. You have rights. And again, your voice really matters. So that's the student side of things. And then we also have the faculty side. As I mentioned earlier, this is embedded in each individual internship and community-based learning course, and faculty structure those courses very differently. Additionally, we thought it was important that we educate faculty about what was in this training before they're delivering it to their students. If a student would choose to report to them or would have questions about the training, we don't want them to be blindsided by that moment. So we did this through face-to-face workshops, plenty of informational videos. I made a few videos, sent a lot of emails, and this is an ongoing aspect of our annual experiential learning workshop. So we actually have faculty in that workshop complete the training completely themselves, and when we have a whole debrief session on it, where they talk about, well, how might I have a follow-up conversation in my class about this? If a student reported to me, do I know where to go next? So we also give them tons of resources, reporting lines, so they understand what to do next. If we want faculty to be that resource, it's important that we equip them with the tools, knowledge, and honestly, just the confidence to handle those, what can be very difficult, sensitive, and emotional situations. Most importantly, we encourage faculty to reflect with their students regularly. So they build this into the course as an assignment within the first 1 to 2 weeks. And then many are taking that opportunity to engage their students in some critical reflection afterwards. What surprised you? What do you still have questions about? How might you apply this in your future? So again, making sure that that's a big part of their academic experience with amazing implications far beyond just that one class.
Great. Thanks, Kayla. That's great information. So scaling to other institutions, it sounds pretty easy and simple because you've already developed the course, right? So this is a point where Kayla always laughs. Yeah, you've already developed all of those 70 pages or so, and everything's been tested and contrast colors passed, etc. But those of us that are hardcore developers know that anytime you make changes to a finished course, even with colors and branding, it can be a big deal. So we created the University of Wisconsin-Parkside brand first, and then we rolled out a generic version that other University of Wisconsin schools could opt to purchase. And then we offered tiered purchase options as well. So schools that would have a lower budget, they may just want a generic version and with not many changes at all. But if they want the course to be very unique to their school and their brand, such as the UW-Madison client opted for, then we can customize a lot of the resources to the Madison brand colors and people, images. We changed the colors, we changed the logo throughout, and sometimes small parts of the content were changed as well. There's a lot of and there's some examples that Kayla's showing from the UW-Parkside to the generic UW version and then the branded version on the right for UW-Madison. Sometimes there was a lot of color styles and layers used within the course. So all the buttons and their states and the different boxes and shapes and colors had changed, and they have to jive together. And as you can see, that there's everything had to go through color contrasting again because of the layering on top of different colors to make sure that it was accessible and approved. And like the resources slide, which is the bottom slide of each one, I know it's kind of small, but the resources at each school will vary as well. So that page had to pretty much change completely to be the appropriate resources. The logos are different slides and our sizes as well. And these are only the 3 versions we've created so far. The sky's the limit on how many times this program may be rebranded for other universities. So just like looking at the logo being kind of landscape and long rectangular, it can be a little bit of issue to change it to if someone had a taller version of the logo, and then we have to do some addressing of different pages for that. So we're always up for a challenge, and you can imagine it's kind of challenging just to change colors and have everything jibe as it should, like I mentioned before. But it's always fun.
Heidi knows me so well. She knew I was laughing. And yes, but that has also been a really wonderful part of the learning process here. And I also want to share some data about what we learned from Parkside, because I also want to acknowledge it was not a perfect rollout. It was not a perfect implementation. We hit bumps along the road there too. So sharing a little bit of data from last academic year, which was the first academic year it was fully rolled out at Parkside. Obviously, I don't have that complete academic year data yet because we're still in the 24-25 year. So we were seeing 80% completion rates of it in all the courses where the module is published. Big shocker, you can't make students complete every assignment. But that being said, we're really pleased with that 80% mark for that year. And then also, of all the completions, 100% of students were getting at least a passing score. Here's some of the trickier data. To provide a little context, we have about 3,000 undergraduate students and about another 800 to 900 graduate students at Parkside. So of the 37 course sections that requested safety and empowerment, that represents 24 unique faculty members and about 292 students that were enrolled in those courses. And yet, as I said, it is never perfect. That implementation rate of faculty who requested it but then actually went through and published it was only about 50%. We put it in their course, and the first couple of weeks of school go by and it's a bit of a blur. And as we pulled some data, we're like, oh my goodness, we assumed they would publish it. They assumed they knew how to move forward with it. And again, that was us having to check our assumptions on that. So yes, that is maybe a bit of a scary number, but I'm also excited to say that we learn and grow from our data, which is why we do these assessments. And we have doubled down our communication efforts, our advocacy efforts this academic year. We are already seeing an improvement in this area. much more implementation, more published modules, faculty recognizing, oh yes, my bad, thank you for the follow-up communication, and catching it sooner, catching it by the second week of the semester instead of at the end of the semester, so that it's still a meaningful time for students to engage in that training. So again, a learning and growing opportunity, but I'm so glad that we're able to track this data and even then share it back with dynamic training resources and with future partners that we're working with, so that I can tell them some of the pitfalls we faced and hopefully help them work proactively to avoid any of those challenges. So we can see if this last Slido will pop up for everybody. If not, I am totally fine using the chat. We would love to just hear what's sticking with you after, some of that content that we just shared. What is a takeaway for you? And again, if that QR code isn't working, again, if the third question isn't popping up, the chat is totally fine as well.
It looks like it's going to the first.
It's still stuck on that first
Yeah,
question.
it's
So weird.
Yeah, so weird. So we can use the chat.
Yeah, chat is totally fine. It'll work great. So yeah,
Yeah.
some takeaways, some big thoughts that you might be sitting with after some of this information.
I'll ask, as a university professor also, would you open this up to universities in other states?
Oh, absolutely. The training content most definitely was designed to be broadly applicable for basically any higher ed institution across the United States. So using language that was not going to be regionally specific, or if we have information that's unique to a school or maybe a certain system, those are the easily customizable features that we thought about when initially designing the training. So we also want to be able to take some questions. So maybe that would be also a great opportunity to just answer some questions. I know there was one sitting in the Q&A that I wanted to address live. But also before I answer that question, I want to point out the link tree that we have here, which again, you can access that link tree either using the QR code or using that link. And I'm also going to drop that link in the chat right now. Where we have our case study, we have our contact information, we have a short trailer which highlights some of the key features of this training. So it's a great one-stop shop for any follow-up questions or needs that you might have regarding safety and empowerment. We've got a great question from Michelle in the Q&A. Michelle asked, how does the current political climate regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion impact how we navigate issues of equity? This is a fantastic question, and also something that I worked very closely with UW Legal on about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we were moving into the final stages of this project. Our legal went through and made a lot of changes, making sure that we were using the legally accepted definitions of harassment and discrimination. We actually originally, the title of the training did include words like equity, and they suggested that we focus more on the behavior, those appropriate boundaries, more broadly applicable terms. So there was actually some proactive thought behind that. And here we are today, where depending on your institution, your organization, or your company, you might be facing a variety of perspectives on the use of those terms. So number one, the training was designed with that in mind. And number two, that is the absolute benefit of having those customization options, those tiered options. So if you need to make wording changes, if you need to alter how certain things are displayed on some of the pages, we also are open to that. And that's a part of the customization process. So we can work with each institution or agency to make it meet their needs and work within their system. Oh, Mariah. Kayla is musical. Musicality into accessibility. That's like just a big question. I'm a former middle school choir teacher and a professional musician. And I believe that musicality, musicianship, and artistry as a whole is all about expression. And people of all abilities, mindsets, and backgrounds have the ability to express themselves. And it's about putting the right instrument in their hands to do that. That instrument might be a violin. That instrument might be a recorder. That instrument might be their own voice. That instrument might be something in a technology space, like a training like this. So one of the great joys across my career has been finding what that instrument is, what that outlet is for every student, and letting them run with it. It does take that time to ask those questions, though, and evaluate how you differentiate for 35 fifth graders in your choir class. But when we do our composition assignments, every single one is different. Every single one is unique, and every student is proud of what they created. And that's just one of those things that has really stuck with me and really guided me even in these later parts of my career. What a lovely question.
We had a question come in too about if the content was responsive. And yes, Lectora makes it easy to truly be responsive. It works best in landscape mode, but it is responsive to the computer, smartphone, and tablets.
Any other questions from the room? Well, thank you all so much for having us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, sharing a little bit about our experience working on this project. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions for Heidi and the development team, Chris on the wonderful accessibility elements. I'm also happy to chat about implementing this at a higher ed institution that might be looking for a solution like this. So again, thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you, ladies, for all of that fantastic information. It was wonderful. Wow, you're touching a lot of people with a lot of education and helping empower people to make sure that they stay safe and that things get reported because campuses are fantastic places, but they can also be kind of scary places as well. And you've got first-time students who aren't exactly sure how to proceed because they've never been in that situation before. So thank you. Thank you for the contribution that all three of you have made to the various campuses, and hopefully it'll go to other campuses as well. Now, Casey just dropped some information into the chat. We do have a very, very special March coming up. It is Women's History Month. And so we have an entire series, including, I'm thinking we're technically kicking it off with these wonderful ladies right here. What do you think? Okay, cool. Awesome. So if you click on the link, you will also see the rest of the content that we have planned out. It's through the month of March, every single Thursday. We will have a Women in L&D Empowerment series going on, and we hope to see you there. Thank you so much, ladies, once again for your contribution, not only to the training industry, but also to ELB Learning. We appreciate each and every one of you and all your participation.